Welcome to the Hometown Gym Podcast, the place where we teach parents and those new to fitness the best practices of physical health so that you can have the ability to run around and keep up with your kids and grandkids, and so that you can smile when you look at yourself in the mirror, and most importantly, that you live a pain-free, happy, and long life. It was April 2017. I had just moved to Virginia from Michigan and found myself employed at a small gym in Ashburn, and I was observing the noon class. As the class progressed, we began movement preparation for box jumps. Our participants took turns warming up their jumps, and we started with plates and eventually moved to a 12-inch box. The last person in line was Holly Suarez. My first interactions in previous days with Holly were really memorable. She was welcoming, kind, always had a smile on her face. But as she stepped up to the 12-inch box, her smile was swept away. Her legs shook, and you could see the trepidation on her face. Her trainer reassured her he was right next to her, and he wasn't going to let her fall. So Holly loaded her arms, her knees contracted, and she wound her hips tight, getting ready to leap. She closed her eyes and jumped. She stuck the landing. And for most that are listening to this story, especially my younger crowd, a 12-inch box may not seem like a big deal, but for Holly, she may as well have summited Everest. And tonight, we get to tell her story. It's my pleasure to welcome Holly Suarez to Hometown Gym. Holly, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Awesome. Great
Holly,
to be here.
That's one of my favorite memories ever in training people. What made the box jump such a big deal for you?
I remember that like it was yesterday because it was such a fear. So back in my 30s, I was diagnosed with vertigo. But I didn't really take it seriously because it didn't happen very often. Now I wasn't working out, I wasn't going to the gym, I wasn't doing any of those things. I was prescribed a bunch of pills that I didn't take because they didn't make me feel good. And so I just sort of like pushed it aside. As I got older, my vertigo got worse to the point where I was literally falling down stairs, and I had to hold on to railings in order to take stairs up and down, and I would have to take them one at a time because my vertigo was impacting me in such a severe way that I felt like I had no balance. I literally didn't have any balance is the thing. And there was one fall that I had that I messed up my shoulder and I did something to my knee, and I ended up having to go to physical therapy. And I saw a physical therapist for vertigo and worked with her for about 6 weeks just so that I could walk a straight line. I mean, it got to the point where I had a note in my car from my physical therapist that if I was ever stopped, I wouldn't be able to do a field sobriety test. Not that I would drink and drive, but I wouldn't be able to pass something like that. Do you know what I mean? So
Totally get it. Yeah.
yeah, so it was that bad. And she had casually mentioned working out, and I sort of blew her off because I was at the mindset at that time that I'm thin, I eat well, I don't need to work out. Working out is for people that are overweight. That was really what I thought working out was for. And, as I kept going with physical therapy, and she kept saying, if you join a gym, you can, work on these things on your own and you can get better. And I did see improvement from physical therapy. So one day I'm just sitting on the couch and I'm perusing Facebook or something, and I see this picture of this girl doing push-ups in an ad for the CrossFit gym. And I don't know anything about CrossFit. I've never been in a CrossFit gym, never heard of CrossFit. I've been in the Army. So I'm like, oh, I can do push-ups. Like, that looks interesting. By now I'm in my early 40s. I'm like 40, 41. And I mentioned it to my husband that I was like, oh, I think I might go and try this program. It's a 6-week program at at this CrossFit gym, and he laughed and said, "You haven't done push-ups in 20 years." He was right. I mean, I hadn't. I was like, "I can do it." And he was like, "You can't even go up and down the stairs without like, you're about to fall every time you go up and down the stairs." I'm like, "I got this. I'm gonna show up." And I actually signed up, but the class was full, and they were like, "Well, you can wait until September to come in." And I said, "Okay, I'll wait. Well, look, I'm determined now. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do this thing." And I didn't know anything about CrossFit. I called my daughter and told her I was going to do it, and she kind of laughed and was like, "Do you know what CrossFit? You need to Google CrossFit." And I was like, I'll be fine. I'm not going to Google anything." And so the first day I show up, there are two coaches that have these chains that are tied around their waist, and they have weights, and they're doing pull-ups. And I don't know their coaches, but I thought, "Oh God, this can't be. I am in the wrong place. I don't
Yeah.
know. I've made a mistake." And that's sort of like, I got introduced to the coaches, and I'm like, "Oh, thank God, we're not expected to do that, right? Like, I can't do that yet. Not my physical limitations are many at this point." And I met with Coach Lee and explained my situation, and he assured me that they would work with me on, my problems, because I told him about vertigo, and I said, "Look, it's really bad. This is like I to the point where I can't look up without, you know, coming off balance." And he really welcomed me and made me feel as though it didn't matter what those limitations were, that he was going to get me fit and get me to a point where I would be able to look up without feeling dizzy. And so I kind of just jumped right in, all in. I was just all in at that point. And the I really had to work on finding things that helped me focus. So I would put little marks on the wall and like tell people not to erase them, because I'm looking at it as I'm doing squats. Because if I had a focal point,
Interesting. Yeah.
and I could look at the school, I could look at that point on the board and go up and down and not move my eyes everywhere. I would put tape on the ground or towel on the ground for burpees, because then I could look at this solid piece of whatever and be able to focus on this solid piece and come up and down and not get sick, not like physically get sick. Or nauseous or whatever. And definitely that day with that box jump was a test for me, because I had worked really hard to get stronger and to get more confidence in my balance. And that was, to me, that 12-inch box at that moment was like, this is it. This is the test that's going to show that I can beat this thing, that I can overcome this. I'm not 100% at that point. I'm still wobbly. I'm still having trouble with vertigo. But if I can do this, that means there's hope for me. That's how I felt at that moment. And when I crushed that 12-inch box, I was like, that's it. Like, now I have bigger goals. Now I have things that I feel like I can do anything. That's how it felt. It's just kind of crazy.
It's wild to think, and a big reason I started this company, Holly, is I think the beginning parts of fitness, especially with adults, for me, I would Google stuff, and you kind of end up on bodybuilding.com, or maybe you see a bunch of videos of jacked people going through your Instagram feed. And it's like, man, like a lot of those are like, oh, if you just work out, 5 to 7 days a week and eat chicken and rice all the time, like you're going to be fit. And it's like, that's a tough place to start, right? And that's great that those individuals have been there and do that much volume at that point. And, I even used to be one of those people where I was like, hey, just do this many times and you're going to be healthy. But, as I get older and I have kids and I have a wife now, man, time is really finite for all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And even building up to something like that, where you can overcome a box jump, or you can go up and down a flight of stairs, not lose balance, or walk on sand. It's a big reason for why I do what I do, what we do here. And it's so exciting to kind of share that story. It's such a cool one. When I look back on my experiences as a trainer, it's right up there as one of my favorite memories of all time. And it's such a, again, I described that in the intro, where I think a lot of people look at a 12-inch box jump and go, it's a 12-inch
Yeah,
box jump.
it's what's
But
the big deal, right?
but for you, again, it was probably one of your greatest accomplishments within that year, maybe a few.
Yeah,
For
absolutely.
for those who are unfamiliar with it, what is vertigo?
So for me, I have vestibular vertigo, which is, it's like an inner ear issue. So um, the way that my doctor described it is that I have crystals that are loose in my ear, and those crystals, like, they help you with your balance, and they help you like navigate, you know, the stairs and escalators, which I never went on before. I would take the stairs because I'd rather do one stair at a time than do an escalator that moves. Or I would take an elevator, you know. So, but anyways, it's these crystals and they get loose, and it can be hereditary, or it can just happen. When it does happen, it's usually later on in life, like after 30, and it will happen at random times. So when it first started happening, the very first time that it happened, I thought someone had drugged me. That's what it feels like.
Scary.
It feels as though you had drank too much. The room is spinning. You can't stop it from spinning. You know, the old, when you do drink and you kind of have a spinning
I
and you're trying to
I
keep
know
your
the
foot on
feeling.
the
I know
floor.
the feeling you're
Yes.
talking about. It's not
Yeah.
fun. It's a terrible
Yeah.
feeling.
Not fun. And you can't stop it from spinning. And that's when I got to the ER that first time, because I didn't know what was going on. I hadn't drank. I never experienced this in my life. And that's when they said, you had an episode of vertigo. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And they gave me some pills, like I said before, and they sent me home, and I didn't have it for a while. So I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm fine.
I must be
And
good.
yeah, I guess I'm okay. I guess it was just one of those things. I think I called my mom, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I used to get those, you know." And I'm like, "Why don't you tell me this stuff?" But anyways, it just, so and then it started happening more frequently, and it got to the point where I'm like, "Okay, I can't call out of work." Because when you have an episode, most times it would happen in the morning, and I wouldn't be able to lift my head up off the pillow, because the room would be spinning so much, and you feel so nauseous that you have to close your eyes and lay down.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about exercises to do for vertigo, that there are some things that you can do on your own for that, but I didn't know any of that. So I would just call out of work, and it would drain you for the entire day. So even if the episode went away, you felt like you had the flu or something for the rest of the day. Like, you felt like you've been hit by a truck, and you just want to lay down and sleep. And it was sort of this cycle of, oh, I have vertigo, I can't come to work, I got to lay down and sleep all day, and you can't watch TV because the movement on the TV messes with your you know
Right.
um with your whole feeling, so you feel off. And so you're just kind of laying there in a miserable state, and I didn't really understand. I thought, well, this is just a disease I have now. I just sort of accepted it, like, okay, well, this is just what it is now, and I have to deal with this vertigo, but I don't want to take the pills. So I guess I'm just going to have to call out of work and be sick on some days. And I just kind of dealt with it that way.
What prompted you to actually go and seek out a PT? I think you described you couldn't even go up and down stairs. Like, what was the breaking point where you're
Yeah.
like, oh boy, I gotta go see somebody?
Yeah, so I had fallen down the stairs a couple times, but there was one, and we had wooden stairs, so they were already slippery anyways. But there was
Yes.
one moment that I fell hard, and Phil, my husband, ran into the room, and he picked me up, and I couldn't move my shoulder. I thought I had dislocated it. I didn't know what I had done, but I barely could lift my arm. And my knee was messed up. I didn't know what I did. And I was like, take me to a hospital, all this stuff. I'm in a sling. I've got a knee brace. It was like, what am I doing right now? And my neighbor, who is an ear doctor, actually told me, she saw what had, she saw me coming out of the car with all the stuff, and what happened to you? And I said, I fell down the stairs. I had a vertigo incident. She goes, I am an ear doctor. You probably need to go see an ear, nose, and throat specialist and see what they can do for you.
I would
And that's
never think ear, nose, and throat from balance
who
issues. The human body
exactly
is incredible that
right.
way.
And I was like, all right. And she gave me her information, the place that I guess that she worked at, or maybe she knew someone that did it. I don't think it was her place. I think it was another place. And I called them up and I made an appointment to see an ear person. And he did the exam and wrote me a prescription for PT. And he said, I think PT can help you. I don't want to prescribe any meds for you, because you're not going to take them, because you've already told me you're not going to take them. And I really think that, 6 to 8 weeks of PT will get you where you need to be. And I was like, okay, well, I'll try anything at this point. So I don't want to fall down the stairs again. So that's sort of like how I fell into the whole PT thing. Who knew?
Hey, listeners, first, thanks so much for listening to the show. A quick reminder here, if you're new to the gym or you're not sure what to do or how to start, navigate over to hometowngym.net. This is our website where we have fitness programs for beginners, where you can start with a sample class at no cost to you, with support 7 days per week. In addition to that, we have even more free content through the website over there. Again, that's hometowngym.net. Thanks so much. We're back to our show. I just would never guess that. And it just goes to show just how intricate the human body is. I'm literally imagining like diamonds inside of my ears right now. You just wouldn't guess that would have any control over your balance. It's so wild.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that you found that PT and that from there that stuff helped. Are there any specific exercises that for you, Holly, that really help with the vertigo? And where did you discover that? Was it with the PT or just kind of through time?
It was at PT. So one of the things that she had me do was I had to write my first initial H on a sticky note, and I had to stick the sticky note on the wall, like I directly, and I had to hold on to the kitchen counter, lift one of my legs, and stare at that sticky note. And as I'm lifting my leg as though I'm pulling my knee to my chest, I have to put it back down, and I have to hold my balance while doing that. The next progression would be to let go of the counter and do that. The next progression after that would be to move your head side to side as you're lifting your leg up and down, and you're refocusing back on your initial on the sticky note that's on the wall. And you'd be surprised how sick I would get from doing that when I first started. I could only do, I think, maybe one iteration of that before I would start getting sick. And I wasn't even, when I say that the progression, when I say turning my head, it took me maybe 3 to 4 weeks to be able to turn my head and refocus back on the H, and then turn my head and refocus. And then at the very end of all of that, my goal was to have my hands off the counter, close my eyes, and lift one leg up off the ground and put it back down. And the same thing on both sides. So that was super, super challenging. It was, like, you feel as though you might get nauseous or sick, or that feeling would come on, but she would push me through that. Like, you've got to get over that feeling and until you don't feel it anymore. And that's pretty much what happened. I just kept doing it over and over until I wouldn't get sick. So it's like, she said it was a retraining my brain, so to speak. So
I'm literally like picturing like the worst, I don't know, hangover in the world, and then trying to do that stuff the next day.
Yeah.
Like with for lack of a better example, but I really can't think of anything else where I could get into that mindset where I'm like, man, that'd be really challenging to be able to try to accomplish that. And that sounds really hard, you know? So you're going
Yeah.
from those small, kind of slow iterations, right? And eventually you end up in a CrossFit gym,
Yeah.
which CrossFit is, you know, ultimately
Hard.
hard. It is, right? But in ultimately, you know, kind of about intensity, and we're moving our body through space. And when I think about it, it's typically at the fastest pace that we can do that with within the time domain, right?
Yeah.
So what was it like transitioning from the PT to going to the gym and starting that program?
Um, well, it was intimidating at first, but I was very slow at everything. So I was usually last to finish, if I even did finish anything. So a lot of times, because I started with Coach Lee, I had to uh, scale the reps, and if the class was doing 20, I was doing half of that.
Yeah.
You know,
Let me
and
explain this real quick, Holly, just because we're going to have listeners that'll be like, what is a scale? What is a
okay,
modification?
okay,
And so this is a good segue for this, right? Because we have this in our programming too. Whenever you're doing some workout, whether that's going to be weightlifting or it's going to be conditioning, you're running a mile. Ultimately, we want you guys to get that done within a certain time parameter in some way, shape, or form. We don't just want people going out there and slogging through a workout for, you know, an hour or 2 hours. That's not the point, right? So when we write something, right, we have an intent. We want it to take between 10 to 15 minutes. And if your skill set is not capable of completing that task within 10 to 15 minutes, we either want to lower the repetitions or the weight, or possibly even modify the movement, whether that's the range of motion, or make it to something easier to your skill set so that you can accomplish the task at hand appropriately. That's what Holly was doing. I digress. Holly, jump back in.
yes. So that's what I had to do. Basically, like I said, if the class was doing 20 of something, I was doing 10. I had to really scale everything. I mean, not just the amount of reps, but maybe the movements. So for me, I didn't have good body awareness at the time, or like space and body awareness. And so I would squat to a box or to a ball or something so that I could understand like how far I need to go, or, for me not to fall over. And so at the beginning, the box was a lot higher because I didn't have, first of all, I didn't have the strength, but I also just didn't have the balance quite yet to like really get into a correct squat without like falling. So there was just a lot of things that they worked with me on to get me where I needed to be eventually, that I was going to progress. And so as I got stronger and more confident, and I would have actually less episodes of vertigo. So it would be, there would be some triggers sometimes in class that I would have to like remove myself from the exercise or from whatever it was that we were doing, because it would trigger. And I'm like, okay,
Right.
I have to stop, or I have to literally just stop the workout because I'm going to get sick if I don't. And so then I understood what those triggers were, and I either avoided it or I would modify. So even to this day, I don't do Turkish get-ups because that looking up at my hand and getting up at the same time messes with that. I don't go upside down. So there's certain things that I still to this day do not do. It's not worth
Yeah.
it anyway, for me. And so I would do something else. I would modify or do a different exercise when they were all doing those things. And I never felt like I was left out, or, oh, I can't do this, or, whatever. It was like, well, I have to do something else. And that's just the way I looked at it. If you look at it as, oh, I can't do it, and it's like a bummer, blah, 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 like you're not going to push yourself to get better, or to feel better. So I took it in a different way. I took it as like, well, I'll just do something different. I'll be special. Be the one in the Sesame Street. Which one of these are not like the others?
I love that approach, and it's CrossFit is great. It's programming that we believe in over at Hometown Gym, but it's general physical preparedness, and not everybody's going to be doing the exact same thing, and not everybody should be doing the exact same thing within that, right? So, like, for example, I seldomly will do like pistol squats anymore because it's so rough on my knees, right? And when we met, I was like 25 and, thought I could take on the world. I'm 32 now and have lower back
Yeah.
issues and all this different stuff. And ultimately, I just want to live till I'm
Welcome to the
100.
club.
It's awesome. And I love it. But, with that comes more responsibility, and I want to be able to use my legs and play with my grandkids and, be running, into my 90s would be awesome. So you got to do some different things to make sure that, we're going to be taking care of the joints and your body through time. And so I actually wrote this down as a note where you said, hey, I had to do everything slow. I would replace that word with smart. I just thought your approach was it's what every trainer and coach within a CrossFit gym would love of their individuals, is to do the workout appropriately, which most people do. We've all had instances where we don't. You and I have a great memory of where I didn't do that appropriately and you got me to the finish line. It's another great memory that we've had together, which was super fun. That was that kettlebell workout. That was a disaster for me.
That.
So
Yes,
funny.
the wrong weight. Yes.
Such a my ego.
Yes.
I just did not check at all. Right. I made it miserable for myself, but you approached workouts so smart and so appropriate for your movement level. We're very okay with that. And I would just encourage anyone else who's doing that. You're not getting left behind, and don't let your ego get ahead of you. And
you're still going to get strong. You're still going to get strong. You're still going to get a good workout in. You're just going to get there differently. That's it.
You will. And intensity, that's really just rate of perceived exertion. That's all that means. You're going hard doing something difficult. That's all that word means. Can be done with any movements. And the hardest workouts I've ever done, the hardest workout I've ever done before was burpees in a light barbell. It's 20.1. Yeah. And I still remember it to this day, and it was absolutely brutal. And I probably wouldn't want to do it again. Right. So, okay. So we go through all this. You take this, again, what I think is just an incredibly smart approach to this program. You complete the program, you start to extend to some other stuff. I remember you doing 16-inch box jumps at one time within an actual workout, and you see this progress and all that stuff. What happens next?
Yeah, so I just started to build, goals. I wanted to do pull-ups, I think. So I worked for a whole year and I could do 4 strict pull-ups. I was super proud of myself. I couldn't even do one. There were, you just have certain goals you start to make for yourself, because it no longer is a limitation. My vertigo was no longer really a limitation. It was something that was there. It could crop up at any time, but I could handle it. It wasn't something that I was afraid of anymore, or I wasn't afraid to walk up and down stairs. I could take escalators. I could take my luggage on an escalator and feel strong enough and confident enough to do so. And that's I know it sounds so trivial, but for me, I was, man, I am taking the escalator with my carry-on bag, and, and I'm doing good. I'm not falling down. I'm not even afraid. I got this. And so, you start to build that strength, and, I just kept trugging along and, going to CrossFit probably 4 times a week to get stronger and better. And, all of those things that you start to develop goals just like anybody else that goes there. You start to feel like you're just like another athlete there, and that you don't have these special, limitations anymore.
When your vertigo episodes started, Holly, roughly, how many episodes were you having per week, per month?
Oh, it was pretty bad. When it first started, I wasn't having them that frequently, maybe once a month. And then as I got into my 40s, they increased. It was probably maybe even once a week.
Dang, okay.
And then what would happen was that I would be so weak from it that it would affect my balance. Like I couldn't get clothes out of the washer because it required my head to bend down. And so then I would get dizzy in the washer and I'd be like, oh, I can't do that. Like, oh my God, like these everyday chores, these everyday things. And when it starts to affect your everyday life, it's not necessarily an episode. It's a moment in time that happens that you're like, oh, I gotta sit down. Like that just made me sick. Just moving my head too quick. What? So it's stuff like that it really was limiting in how I lived my life, just my everyday life. If I drop something on the floor in the kitchen, it's like, okay, hold on, I gotta pick this up and like hold on to the counter while I pick it up so I don't fall forward picking up a spoon off the ground. It's little things like that that came up. When it starts to affect like your everyday life, you like are miserable.
That would
It's
be,
a
that'd be really hard, and just things that I personally take for granted. Right. And
yeah,
obviously something that, like you said, it was hereditary or it just kind of happens to you. It's not like you weren't like doing stuff or you were just being lazy. Like that wasn't the case. It just,
no,
you have this condition. You were maybe born with it or just developed it,
yeah.
and you couldn't do a simple task like that. It's, for me, that's like scary, but it's also so cool that you went through this path to be able to overcome that. So you had episodes in your 40s about once a week
Yeah,
when you started your fitness regimen, kind of went through CrossFit, other things. Like, where did
yeah.
that take those episodes to? How frequently were we talking?
I think during when I was living in Virginia, uh, I would have, and during CrossFit, those days, prior to the pandemic, I would maybe have an episode once every, I don't know, 5 months, once every 6 months.
Jeez,
If
wow,
if
that's
if
cool.
if that, and what would bring it on, what I found, because I was kind of tracking at that point my food and all the things that I was doing. If I had a very heavy sugary day the day before, if
Interesting.
I
Very
had
interesting.
yeah. So like if I had, somebody had a birthday and I had birthday cake or, something that was like outside of my realm of what I eat. And it was usually sugar related. And so like I found that, okay, this processed sugar is like probably could be a culprit. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but there's a link there. So I haven't had a vertigo incident. I've lived here 2 years now. It's been over 3 years since I haven't had not one incident, not one.
That is, it's the reason we do what we do. That's amazing. That is
Yeah.
such a cool story. And I mean, I can't even put it in words just how much an improvement in the quality of life that has to be for you, Holly. That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah. It took a long time to get here. I mean, I'm 48, so it took a while, but I'm not worried about it. And if I do get an episode, if I have, knock on wood, I won't, but I know how to take care of it now. I know the exercises I need to do to take care of it, and I'll be fine. I'm not phased by it. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect my daily life. I could pick up a spoon off the ground without having to hold on to something. So, yeah, it doesn't affect me anymore. Not at all.
Amazing, amazing. And I know that you transitioned to Florida recently, and I know kind of also just kind of your different fitness regimen that you're doing now. What stuff
Yeah.
are you working on now? What are we doing in the gym?
Yeah. So when I first moved here, I mean, I've got my own personal gym. During the pandemic,
Yes.
I bought a rig and I bought
I love
everything, a
that. I love
rower,
that.
the whole thing. So I
Yep.
did my whole thing on my own. But then when we moved here, I joined CrossFit gym that was it's a little bit competitive nature there.
Yeah.
They have some games athletes there that go there, and for me, I didn't quite mesh with the way that they do their sessions.
Yeah.
Class sizes were really large, probably 20 people, and for me, I need that individual attention. So I didn't stay there very long. The people were nice. anything, about that. It's just, I need more attention. I need somebody to really look at my form, because I have a degenerative disc problem in my lower back. And I also have a SI joint problem in my lower back. And so I can't afford to make mistakes, because that can put me out, and I won't be able to lift if I make a mistake. So I really need someone to watch me. So I left that gym and went to another gym that had smaller class sizes. They weren't CrossFit affiliated, but they were CrossFit like. And we had maybe 2 or 3 people in the class, which I felt really good about. But the coaches at the time were very cheerleader-ish and less technical.
Yeah.
And so I don't need a cheerleader. I need someone to correct me and make sure I'm doing something that's not going to hurt me. And I say that because since I moved here, been here 2 years, for an entire year, I wasn't able to lift heavy because of my back problem. And I had to go to PT here and work with a PT person. And a chiropractor who told me I would never be able to do back squats unless I wanted to have surgery. So I'm like, okay.
Watch this, bro.
Yeah. I'm doing back squats, by the way, but
Good for you.
yeah. So, I worked with a PT person here, and I've been working with her for the past 2 years. I only see her once a month now because it's more like maintenance stuff, and she challenges me. But it took me a year of getting out of this back pain. And when I say it was excruciating, I mean, crying, I was in a lot of pain for a long time. And it was a bad squat is what happened. And I overcompensated and had some issues with my back and my SI joint. And that just blew me up for about a year. And so then I, left that gym recently, in fact, probably about 3 weeks ago, to work with a strength coach. And basically his whole thing is, it's more traditional. We do some Olympic lifting, but a lot of the things that we're doing are traditional type lifts. And we don't have like machines or anything like that. It's not like a gym. We have the same kind of
Free
weight.
weights,
Yeah,
barbells. And
exactly.
when you say
Barbell.
when you say traditional movements, Holly, just describe what
Like,
movements are you guys doing?
curls, hammer curls, that kind
Love
of
it.
stuff, like broing out with like dumbbells. you know.
I love a good hammer curl. We have them programmed in our first program here that we have. So that's awesome. That's cool. All right.
Yeah. So that's what I've switched to, and I like it better. It's not it's more controlled. We do have AMRAPs and we do have EMOMs, but they're not as intense as a CrossFit. We're not doing burpees in between. Everything that we do is weighted. Everything that we do is weighted. And
I
so
gotcha.
for me, it's a better approach to what I need. As I get older, also, women my age, we go through perimenopause, and it affects your hormones, and so your cortisol level is whacked. You have estrogen issues, you got progesterone issues, there's testosterone issues, all kinds of hormonal issues that affect like your recovery. And what I found was, one, I wasn't getting enough sleep. Number two, my recovery was terrible after CrossFit. And what my body needed more time. So I actually had reduced my CrossFit days to like twice a week. And then I would do lifting at home, to kind of offset what I wasn't getting, so I wasn't getting like that intensity 4 days a week. And I found that as I got older, I needed to reduce that cardio-like atmosphere and provide more lifting heavy for my age. And, as we get older, your bone mass changes, you need more protein. All these things matter. When you get older, you need to make sure you're drinking enough water, all the things, right? And it matters more as you age because it can really affect, how you bounce back to be able to like work and live your life, the rest of the day, the rest of the 23 hours of the day. So I wasn't recovering well from CrossFit. When I switched to the heavy lifting program, my recovery like totally changed, And I know that because I wear an Aura ring that tracks my sleep and my recovery, and basically how I feel as well. So those are the things that matter when you get older.
Hey team, we're going to take a really quick break from the show for a quick ask from me. If you're really enjoying the show, please scroll down on Apple Podcast or Spotify, wherever you're watching or listening, and give us a 5-star review. Even better, if there's someone you know and love in your life who would benefit from any of our content or episodes, please take a minute, share your favorite clip with them. It would mean a lot to us and allow us the greater chance to affect as many lives as possible so that others can live a pain-free, happy, and long life. Thank you so much. And now we're back to the show. I love that. And it's so ironic. I was talking to my mother-in-law about this, the perimenopause stuff. And we're talking about podcasting. We're talking about this podcast. And she's like, oh, we should talk about that because that's a real thing. And I was like, I know. I was like, I'd love to talk about that and learn more about that stuff. Because to be frank, Holly, I don't know a lot about that. I haven't studied that a whole lot in my exercise kind of science career here. And when you're saying that this transition helped you a lot, one, I think that's awesome. And that you had enough self-awareness to make that change, not just run yourself through a brick wall. Right.
Right.
I think that's great. My question is, and this is for really my education, is your recovery. So it sounds like you just relied upon your data with the device that you were wearing to be able to measure that. Could you feel also just like if you did like a 10-minute AMRAP or 20 minutes Metcon, and when I say Metcon, it's like metabolic conditioning. We're doing movements at a high heart rate is kind of what we're doing. Could you tell kind of like in the workout where you're like, man, I'm not gonna be able to recover from this well, or was it just, hey, I relied upon data to be able to support this? How did you figure that out?
So both. I felt like garbage, afterwards, and it's like you're trying to outwork out your feelings, but you can't. You just feel like you feel wiped the rest of the day, and it didn't matter. I tracked my macros, so I knew what I was eating. Yeah, I knew what I was putting in my body. I know what I was drinking. I cut out coffee. I cut out the things, caffeine, the things that affect hormonal issues. So I knew that it was these intense workouts that had me dying on the floor 4 days a week, and it just wasn't working for me anymore. I just felt like I just didn't feel good, and on top of that, it's like you get more injured because you're tired, you lose form during
move like shit when your heart rate's at 180. I
you just,
get it. Yeah,
and my heart rate still goes up with lifting in my lifting program. I still get up there. It's just that I do so in a different way. It's so different. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm not doing, 20 cleans in a minute or something. It's just when I'm doing that kind of high volume, high intensity kind of workout, just doesn't serve me anymore. And I do want to normalize perimenopause because I feel like my mother's generation didn't talk about this and what happens to women, and everybody women in their 40s are like, what is happening? Why am I gaining weight? I haven't changed the way I've eaten. Why can't I sleep? Why is it hot all the time? Why am I miserable? Why is my mood? What's wrong with my libido? What's wrong with this X, Y, and Z? All of these things, these hormone changes affect everything, your recovery, your sleep, when you can lift, or not when you can lift, but how much you can lift on that certain day, because, you in your cycle, it may affect like how well you're going to be able to, manage the workout that day. So all of that stuff matters, and I didn't know that for a long time. I just was just trying to, keep going.
If you all would like to listen to the second episode that Holly and I will be talking about, I've wrote this down. We're gonna do a perimenopause episode, and we'll dive into that, and maybe even bring a guest on there that's going to know way more about that than I will. Right? That'll be good if we can get some sort of a doctor or something like that on here, Holly. I'd love to bring you on again, talk to you
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
that. That'd be super interesting. Awesome. I love the transition. I love you talking about how much you're enjoying lifting, and it's so ironic. I would not think that as you age that it would be better for you to reduce the conditioning aspect and then add weight, right? It just, in my mind, doesn't seem right. That doesn't mean I'm right at all, right? And this is so relative to kind of the individual, and how your body is going to be feeling and how it responds to stress.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And when you're talking about heart rates going up on lifting, I was doing a 10 rep back squat last week. I got to like rep 8, and I'm like dying there. My heart rate got so high at that moment. And there is something special about that, where I think you do just kind of slow down. And if you have a mirror in front of yourself too, super helpful, because you can actually
Yeah.
watch what you're
You can
doing.
watch what you're doing.
Or
Hmm.
if you have that trainer, the extra set of eyes on you, right? That person can talk to you while you're moving up and down as well, which is going to be, that's super cool. Any goals that you have currently right now that are related to fitness stuff, Holly? Or are you just like, hey, I'm
Yeah.
just doing this to feel good, and things are good right now?
I mean, yeah, I think things are great right now. I am just doing it to feel good. I'm actually, my coach records all my lifts, so I know where my numbers are.
Yeah.
So I don't have to do it for myself. And he, has me on a path to get stronger. And actually, right now, we're trying to take away the ball that I squat to, because I still squat to a ball. And so, he is all about, like, we're not going to increase your weight until we take the ball away. When we take the ball away, we could start increasing some weight. So that's sort of my goal right now, is to get rid of the ball and squat without the ball, and then be able to increase that weight, and just keep going. And I'm always trying to better myself in terms of, what does my nutrition look like? I think that is so overlooked in most gyms, because
Yeah.
it was really offered to me in the beginning, and I kind of like blew it off, because I thought, oh, I eat clean, and this is my idea of eating clean 8 years ago,
Yeah. What did
was
that look
eating
like?
salad. It was like eating salads like 3 times a day. And it
Yeah.
wasn't because I was trying to lose weight. It was because I really liked salads.
I get you.
And I didn't understand that I needed protein. No wonder I was getting like these problems. You know what I'm saying? I didn't eat enough protein. I don't even think I ate enough calories. Looking back, I'm like, how in the world did I even go to CrossFit and like survive the rest of the day? Because I sure as heck didn't eat enough to maintain any sort of muscle back then, and I didn't even keep track of my protein or my fats or carbs, none of that. I didn't keep track of anything. I just would eat salads and have a couple of eggs in the morning, and that was like my meal. And I might have a steak in the evening, and that was it. I didn't really, I didn't drink enough water, I'm sure. I was probably walking around dehydrated. Who knew? I really like I feel like most people really underestimate the power of nutrition when you are working out. Doesn't matter what you're doing, CrossFit, whatever, running, I don't care what you're doing. It's so important, and I wish I would have known that 8 years ago, or excuse me, I wish I would have listened to the coaches that told me that 8 years ago, and I didn't, because I thought, what are you talking about? I eat clean, I eat salads, I eat all the things. I wasn't doing any of those things. Looking back now, that I'm now taking care of my nutritional needs. So.
When you change the nutrition regimen that you're on, you told us about the salads and steak in the evening. Where did you go next? Like, what was the next iteration of that?
I actually joined a couple of groups on Facebook that talked about, macros, and I didn't even know really what macros were. And I started just kind of, how you just go down a rabbit hole of
Oh yeah.
information. And I started getting overwhelmed, and I'm like, I don't even know how to track my macros. Like, how do I do this? And I just started just to tracking my food. Okay, I'm just going to track what I eat normal, eat my salads, eat my steak. Let's just see how this all pans out. And then I looked at the numbers and I kind of went by some guides online, and I was like way off, like not even way under the protein. Like I didn't have enough carbs. I barely had enough calories to sustain life. It just was atrocious. And I just like, okay, I got to make some changes. So then, I didn't hire a nutritionist like I should have. I went down, the whole like, okay, let me Google some foods that are high in protein. Oh, shrimp. I'll add shrimp to my salad. You know, I was still on the salad kick, so it took me a while to get there, and now I'm eating appropriately, but it definitely was a trial and error, and like, figuring it out and doing it on my own, basically.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, when Holly is saying macros, she's referring to proteins, carbs, and fats, and the combination of those that are necessary to fuel your body. Traditionally, typical American standard American diet is, I'll say the carbs are typically overeaten. Fat, debatable, maybe undereaten. That's probably more opinion based than anything. And then protein drastically undereaten.
Oh
Right. And
yes.
that's the stuff that supports the mass that we
Yes.
like, that lean stuff. So that's what we're referring to when we're talking about that. And Holly, I actually love the story that you're talking about, where you just went on Google and you were figuring stuff out. We'll talk a lot about this, and we did even at Ashburn CrossFit, just taking action to be able to figure out a solution to your problem. I did the same things you did when I first found. I used to be a big macros guy myself, and we'll still use that from time to time. It's a great tool. And I did the same thing where I was like, okay, well, what foods are high in protein? And that's, I would eat a lot of chicken is kind
Yeah.
of where I would go to with all that stuff. But if I needed to fit whatever it was to kind of fit in my puzzle for proteins, carbs, and fats, I would spend a lot of time on Google or MyFitnessPal or whatever it was going to be. And those little steps ultimately got you to, and I've seen the transition from your physique too. I've seen that post. I think it was Facebook, Instagram, one of the two, from when you started and your body
Yeah.
composition changed to, it was a couple of years ago, but it was drastic and it was awesome. Right. And
Yeah.
that's all because of the action that you took
Yeah.
on Google, and just figuring out, well, like what foods are higher in protein that are going to be able to support my body in a better way.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool thing that you did. And the small steps lead to those big
Yeah.
changes.
And also help you recover, when you
Yeah.
don't drink enough water, when you drink alcohol, or when you drink coffee, or things with caffeine. All of those little things that you put in your body like matter in terms of, how am I going to feel the next day? How is this going to affect me the next day? And as you get older, it really matters so much more. I mean, in my 20s, I make this joke about my husband, who, when we met in the military, and he would literally be smoking a cigarette while he's running a formation with the military in the back, and he was fine. We just came back from the club at
Feels
5
such a
a.m.
badass. Oh
I
man, I
know
love
he
that.
is. Yeah. And so it was, but in your 20s, you could easily go to the club until 3 o'clock in the morning, and then
Right, right.
be at formation at 5 a.m. and do your job all day long and come home and be just fine. But when you're in your 40s, and people tell you this, but you don't believe it. You don't believe what they're saying. You're like, nah, that's not going to happen to me. Oh, it does. It really, really affects everything, how you feel the next day. And then if you don't feel good, then you're not going to perform well, and I want to perform well every day. So I'm working on that, recovery part.
Me and you both, Holly. And it's funny because when we had a lot of interactions, I was, the 25, 26, 27-year old who I didn't understand a lot, right? Because I was single at the time. I didn't have a family or anything. And we talk a lot about failure on this podcast, right? And my failure to kind of get into the mindset of what it was like to, you know, be a mother within a family, or go to work from, I don't know, 8 to 6 and then try to go to the gym afterwards. I had no idea really what that was even about until, you know, I got married, I had kids, I started working a 9 to 5 and then have to get up at 5:30 in the morning to be able to go to the gym. And that's really key, to be able
Yeah.
to figure out, you know, where can I find time for that? What can I do? And that takes time to be able to transition that. And you and Phil adapting that to your life. I know Phil's got his own story with this stuff too, which is really cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, thanks for sharing all that information. As far as my last question here really is, I want to tell a story after this. And then as far as nutrition goes, what are you doing now? We're still doing macros?
No, so I have a meal service plan that I use. They actually have a farm here in South Florida. And so they drop off meals twice a week at my house, and it has the carbs and the protein and the fats on it, you know, on their little label. I don't
Yeah.
really need to track anymore. I pretty much know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You've tracked so much that you know, a lot of times you're what you eat during the day doesn't really change that much unless you're eating out somewhere. And so I don't necessarily need to track anymore because I kind of know what I'm putting into my body and like where I'm at numbers wise. And so, you know, I kind of let that go. Every once in a while, I'll track to see, okay, am I on track? Like, what am I doing? But for the most part, I don't need to really track anymore. I just kind of, you know, eat the same way that I've been eating. So
I know the feeling. And even when you're so used to tracking, you know, the 4 ounces of chicken, you know, or the 6 ounces of shrimp, where you're like, yep, that's
yep,
210
that's
calories and
18.
20,
Yeah.
26 grams of protein. I know the
Yeah.
exact feeling that you're saying. And I think that's awesome that you transitioned to that. Awesome. Well, I mean, the last thing that I want to talk about is the infamous story of when Holly became Coach Holly. And again, we talk a lot about failure, you know, on this podcast, the ability to be able to do workouts appropriately, right, within our
Yeah.
programming or your programming. Or gosh, if you go into the gym and you're just lifting a barbell and, you know, your rate of perceived exertion, you know, should be, you know, 7 out of 10, but you feel like crap that day, maybe just back it up a little bit, move well, and just move underneath a lighter barbell. Holly, let's talk about the kettlebell running workout that left Brandon in complete shambles. What happened?
You were very ambitious in the weight that
It's
you
a
chose
great word. That's a kind word.
for those kettlebells. And I believe I think you had to do a carry, 400 meters, right?
It was a
And
combination of kettlebell snatches and overhead carries.
yeah,
You are correct.
and overhead carries. And if you put it down quite a bit. Um,
I did.
yeah, there was a point in your face. I knew that you'd chosen the wrong weight when I saw your face. It was this, oh my God, what did I just do? But I can't fail in front of my class face. It was a
Excellent
very
description.
because everybody's watching. I'm a coach and I can't let them see me fail at this. So I've got to just keep going. And I your face, you were very defeated looking. It was almost like I don't know what I'm going to do to get through this. And I could see there was a break that you took that was a little bit too long. And I was like, you know, I need to go help him get through this because his mind is gone. It's out now. He's no longer in this, and this is not even about saving face at this point. This is just about I need to figure out how to move these kettlebells back into the gym. I mean, that's where we were at that point. And
Yeah.
so I remember running up to you. I was like, Brandon, pick it up. Let's go. Like move, you know, I think take a couple steps, like, and you know, part of that for me was from the military. It's just something that you do when you see somebody struggling. You don't leave them behind. You go and pick them up and you help them move. And so, you know, I remember telling you, pick it up, let's go. Take a couple steps. And I'm like, okay, put it down. And then you would put it down. And I'm like, all right, let's go. Pick it up again. Let's go. And then, we just kind of moved slowly to that finish line. And you were so embarrassed, I think, at that point that you almost didn't want to say anything to me, but you did. I mean, you thanked me for getting you through it, but
I would not have finished that workout if you weren't there. It would
you were
not have happened. It wouldn't have happened. I would have
gotta plug in my
quit.
computer. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was
Go ahead.
sorry about that. I'm on 7% over here, so I gotta
You're
plug
good.
in.
There's no
But
worries at all.
yeah, so the way I remember it is you were pretty much done. You had it. You had given up is what I saw in your face. But I knew that you were just going to stand there. You weren't going to move. I was like, all right, he can't just stand there. Like I got to go get him.
Yeah.
So it was definitely, I felt that you were embarrassed by it, but I also knew that like you shouldn't be, because we've all been there. I mean, I think we have all been in that situation where, we've selected the wrong weights, we've done the wrong thing, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh boy, now I got to figure this out. Now I got to get through this, and I mean, I've done it, where I've just selected a weight. I did it a couple of days ago. We were doing deadlifts every minute on the minute. I was doing 135 and I thought, what the hell? Like, what am I doing? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I got through it, but there's times where you kind of second guess yourself and you're like, man, wow, why did I do this? Why did I choke? Why did I get myself in this situation? I'm supposed to be the coach.
And so, the story and the takeaway from that is a couple of different things, right? And I should have felt embarrassed 100%. And here's why, right? My ego was so high. I could have set the kettlebell down at any time and went and grabbed the 53 pounder or 44 pounder and just changed and done it appropriately. I could have done that at any time, but my ego was like, no, bro, I'm going to lift the 70 pounder. Like it's going to be fine. And it wasn't fine. And the second thing is, so, that is, hey, just check your ego, do what's going to be appropriate for you.
Exactly.
And I've failed at that more times than I can consider. Right. And the second thing is, boy, it's nice to have friends and great people surrounding you. That's why it's great to have a coach or a partner who's next to you. So if you guys are listening to this, having those conversations or working out with your friends, that's a good thing to be able to do. And again, I would never have made it through that workout if it wasn't for you walking 100 meters down the road and being like, all right, Brennan, like just bring the kettlebell to me. And I did do that. And we finished it. And it was, again, it was a great memory.
And it's like, pick it up, move it, just come to me. And then sometimes you would pass me and I would like, okay, great, pass me.
Yeah.
And then, we would do it again and do it again. And it was, I knew that you weren't going to make it if someone didn't step up. And I think people didn't because you were the coach and they were like, oh, he knows what he's doing. And I'm like, nah, I can see it in his face. He is done. He's checked out. And
everyone fails. Everyone
Yeah.
fails. Everyone makes bad decisions, including, your coach or your boss or anybody in a position of authority. Like we're just all human by nature and we do that. And had you, I don't know, not done what you did, I would have suffered in a way that would have been a lot worse. And I'm so glad that you did do that and got a little uncomfortable and did what you did, because everybody benefited from it, which was so cool. Holly, I know we're getting, we're pushing 10 o'clock over here on a Sunday night, but hey, closing thoughts, and then I'm going to let you get to the rest of your evening here.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate that I was able to tell my story. I hope that maybe someone can relate, or that was, or in a similar situation that maybe they don't feel comfortable about where they are at physically. It's never too late to start, ever.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter age, physical limitations, whatever. Don't let that, be the reason why you don't start or that you don't keep going. That's it.
I love it. Holly, are you still on social media? Where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm Facebook and Instagram. Instagram is kilo.gypsy.fam. That's my Instagram.
Love it. Right. So you guys want to see Holly lift? You guys can follow her over there. That's Holly Suarez, ladies and gentlemen. Teacher, wife, mom, and badass. Again, it's 10 p.m. on a Sunday night. So wherever you're listening or watching, thank you for dropping in at Hometown Gym. Holly, thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Brandon. Bye.